Welcome back to the conversation in News Central Television. The first half of the program, we did look at the situation in Tunisia, where members of the opposition are calling for the resignation of President Kais Saied following unprecedented low voter turnout in the just concluded parliamentary elections. It's now time for us to switch gears and move to South Africa, where President Cyril Ramaphosa has been re-elected as leader of the African National Congress at the party's 55th National Conference in Johannesburg. President Ramaphosa overcame attacks from within his highly factionalized party and an embarrassing Phala farm scandal. So Ramaphosa won a second term as ANC president, beating off rival Zweli Mkhize for the position. Ramaphosa received 2,476 votes to Mkhize's 1,897 votes. Paul Mashatile was elected as deputy president of the party. In breaking down the voting, Matlante said the 4,436 delegates were eligible to vote. It said that 4,386 votes were cast and that 4,384 ballots were counted. Now, joining me to discuss all of this is Dr. Dale McKinley, is an independent political and economic analyst and researcher. He joins from Johannesburg, South Africa. And I also have Dr. Ntsikelelo, breakfast political analyst, and Dr. Hermon Berhane Ogbamichael, head of journalism program, Cape Peninsula University of Technology. A warm welcome to you, gentlemen, and thanks for joining me on the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for having me.
No. I'd like to start off with Dr. McKinley. How would you describe the conduct of the ANC conference over the last few days? Was it transparent, free and fair?
It's hard to say what goes on behind the scenes, but at the first glance, yes, in terms of the integrity of the vote, the Electoral Commission of the ANC, led by former President Kgalema Motlanthe, certainly, I don't think there's any real questions as to the integrity of the vote at the Congress. I think where the questions will still lie is whether or not there was vote buying prior to the Congress, and whether or not money was used to curry favor with particular delegates or others. And while there's no proof that that is the case, certainly from the past examples and what happened at the previous ANC Congress, there's enough evidence to suggest that money politics does play a role in ANC electoral politics. But the election itself, as it was carried out today and yesterday at the Congress, I think one could confidently say that they were free and fair, and they reflect the delegates' vote as it happened.
Thank you, Dr. McKinley. Now, Dr. Ogbamichael, were you expecting President Cyril Ramaphosa to win a second term as leader of the African National Congress against the backdrop of the Phala farm scandal?
I wouldn't question, actually, that he would be re-elected. He seems to garner some votes through different means, especially with all the Phala inquiry, and last time the former president, President Zuma, tried also to distract him with by opening a criminal case against him. So there were many things that he has expected. So if you see even on top these top leadership positions, 5 of the positions are filled with the renewed 22 members of his camp. It's only the 2, Nombulo Makonian and Paul Mashatile, who were not actually members of this renewed 22. So he seems that he has done some work to be the president of the ANC.
Okay, I'd like to bring in Dr. Breakfast. There was a last-minute surge of support for President Ramaphosa's rival in the post, talking about Zweli Mkhize. And when the results were announced, some of them were kind of shocked at the results. What do you think was responsible for this?
Well, first of all, I'm not taken aback by the turn of events. I saw it coming. I think, in my opinion, the writing was on the wall who stood a chance to win the conference that is underway at the moment. even though I think the forces of RT have put up a good fight. I mean, there have been a lot of people who have had a change of hearts at the 11th hour. But I must say that I was taken aback by the posture of some delegates from Limpopo in particular and Northwest who jumped ship and sided with the other faction, even though they were given a mandate to carry. I think that was done.
What do you think was responsible for them jumping ship? What could have happened? What sort of horse trading or deals went on behind the curtains?
I think what had happened is that some people did not want to announce who they support in advance because they had a fear that some branches who did not support the incumbent were going to be disbanded, and decided to cross the political Rubicon. And after they had crossed the bridge, then decided to take a step back and draw their swords and declare who they support. But at the same time, I think that was a betrayal of the will of their branches.
Thank you very much. Dr. McKinley, what are the implications of this victory for Ramaphosa's presidency of the African National Congress as we look towards the 2024 elections?
First of all, it's some relief. There was a lot of certain schools of thought that given the Pala Pala scandal, given the problems with power cuts in our country, with the general state of the economy, that Ramaphosa was on the defensive, that he was very weak and he was vulnerable. So I think his victory at the Congress, and certainly the fact that most of the office bearers are allies of his camp in the ANC, would suit him. But it's too early to say because first of all, we're going to have the elections for the National Executive Committee, the NEC, which is the largest decision-making body in between Congresses. It's very up in the air as to the composition of that, whether or not that will be a much more difficult executive committee for Ramaphosa to push his agenda. But as president of the country, I think he's probably going to, people in South Africa are very, very tired, I think, of the economic woes and the general state of the economy. So I think they're looking to Ramaphosa basically to try to do much more than he did in his first 5 years. And whether or not the ANC will translate his popularity, which he has increasingly been shown in the polls to be more popular than the ANC itself, whether that will translate into, I think the key thing for Ramaphosa is will the ANC get above 50% in the 2024 elections? It's been losing support in every single election for the last 3 or 4 elections. And so that's the question. This victory will mean very little if the ANC goes to the 2024 elections and loses majority. It'll then have to enter into coalition governments, both at provincial and national level, and that will weaken Ramaphosa and his agenda. So it's still too early. It's a positive development for him at the moment, but the political battles that lie ahead are long and going to be very hard.
Now, staying with you, Dr. McKinley, just a few weeks ago, President Ramaphosa was about to, throw in the towel. He pulled a Houdini, survived the parliamentary vote following the Section 89 report, and now he's emerged as leader for second term the ANC. How did he do this? And were we expecting any one of this? Because some reports say he had already prepared a resignation speech.
Yeah, I think there was a fairly quick turnaround, and I think it had to do with good legal advice he received. Because what happened was the parliamentary committee, the inquiry, which found that he had a case to answer and that there could be evidence that he had broken the law, was seen by his lawyers as legally weak, as not being based upon a great deal of evidence, as being sort of, in a sense, of very preliminary findings. So I think they convinced him, and I think rightfully so, that he should not then just simply cave into the calls that were saying for him to resign, but to take it on judicial review, which he has done. He's taking it directly to the Constitutional Court. But the bigger picture here is, while he's won this battle, this skirmish at the moment legally, and that turned it around in terms of the perception that he was pronounced guilty before even the evidence had been presented or charges had been presented. Here in South Africa, what the key is whether criminal charges are going to be laid by the National Prosecuting Authority. If that happens, which is a possibility, then according to the ANC's own rules, President Ramaphosa would have to step aside, because the rules of the ANC are that
Yes.
once you're officially charged, you would have to be. So it's still very fluid. It's still a situation which is not completely over at all. But for the moment, he's won the initial skirmishes and the battles. But I think the larger one lies ahead in terms of the legal battles, whether or not he will be prosecuted or not.
Thank you, Dr. McKinley, and I'm happy you raised that step-aside rule, because that was why the erstwhile Sex General Ace Magashule stepped aside. Dr. Ogbamichael, still on the issue of President Ramaphosa's battles. Dr. McKinley said he's won the initial skirmish, but it's not over. President Ramaphosa is still at risk of being investigated by the police, the tax office, and the central bank over the Phala scandal. How do you see this playing out? Do you think the South African state institutions are strong enough and have the independence to go after him?
As Dr. Dale said, it depends on the National Prosecuting Authority to continue with the case. He has escaped the impeachment battle. That is the political side. So now we will have to see the legal side. So I believe that the winning to be the president of the ANC today, it can be a temporary honeymoon. Yet the battle, the legal battle is coming, because some of the his also detractors, or we may not call them detractors, some of them who are not happy with the Phala and other corruption issues, then they will continue actually with the legal battle. So of course, we will have some actually legal challenges coming ahead.
Okay.
So this is just temporary, breathing temporarily now.
So I guess it's not yet uhuru for President Ramaphosa. Dr. Breakfast, President Ramaphosa's rival in this elections, leadership elections for the ANC, Zweli Mkhize, was the health minister in his government until he was forced to resign last year over allegations of misspending funds set aside to do with the COVID-19 pandemic, a charge in which he denied. He denied all those allegations. The ANC as a party seems to become synonymous with corruption scandals. How big of a problem is this to the reputation of the party?
Well, the scandal of digital vibes has ended the image of the ANC. You must remember, I mean, the issue of corruption is not just a buzzword, but it's a phenomenon that embeds itself within the state machinery and also is permeated throughout the length and the breadth of the country. And even the ANC itself, I would argue that it was on trial at the Zondo commission. So some people are concerned that there seems to be a slow pace of responsiveness of the ANC as far as the issue of corruption is concerned. But at the same time, I think Dr. Mkhize was very strategic by resigning by himself and also by taking the report of SIU on a review, which puts the findings, in my opinion, on hold. No wonder he was able to contest against the incumbent, and he lost.
Okay. Now, Dr. McKinley, now that the ANC conference has been completed, will there be any disciplinary measures against the members of parliament, the ANC MPs who voted against the party's position on this Section 89 report? I do know that committees will be formed and that there will be and brought to view. So those that went against the party's position of exonerating President Ramaphosa, will they be dealt with?
Well, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a very softly approach on this front. We have a precedent in our country previously when ex-President Zuma was faced with no confidence votes in parliament, and there were several ANC MPs who voted against the party line, against the instruction of the party to support the president at that time. And so we've seen this again. I don't think you're going to see any expulsions. I don't think you're going to see any heavy-handed disciplinary measures. I think what you're going to see is them called to answer, sort of more of an embarrassment for themselves and a slap on the wrist, possibly, of a disciplinary measures, just to send a message that this is not acceptable. But it's not worth the political capital that would be expended to go after, for example, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who is a minister and a fairly high-powered woman leader within the ANC, or for that matter, several of the other members who are former ministers under President Zuma, because I think that would just then regurgitate a lot of different factional battles within the ANC. So my reading of it is you'll see a disciplinary process, it'll be very light, and they'll move on and try to basically then move past this episode.
Thank you, Dr. McKinley. Now, Dr. Ogbamichael, the ANC elected a new deputy leader, Paul Mashatile, who was not in President Ramaphosa's camp. He defeated Mr. Ramaphosa's preferred candidate for the second most powerful post in the party. Does this mean that David Mabuza will cease to be deputy president? And I mean, if you're going to get a deputy president, which you did not support, how are they supposed to work together?
Yeah, if you see David Mabuza also, he declined the nominations last time. So as I have said, you're right, Paul Mashatile was not in the Renew 22 camp, but I believe that they will find a formula to work out, because basically whoever is the president of the ANC will be the president of the country with the majority vote in 2024, and whoever is the deputy president of the ANC will be the deputy president in the country usually. So they have to work out a formula. That is one of the tasks that the president will be confronted with. So
when is he supposed to take office as deputy president? Is it after the 2024 elections? I'm talking about Paul Mashatile.
Well, that is what it's supposed to be.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, Dr. Breakfast, after the conference has been done, you know, the results are out. How unified or divided is the African National Congress after this?
Well, I think the president has been hamstrung by his own comrades. Hence, he has not been able to enhance the notion of unity, because those who belong to the faction of radical economic transformation have been vehemently opposed to him. I do understand why, largely because, you know, normally politicians don't want to let go of political power, because political power gives you political protection. So he has been accused of all sorts of things that he tends to gravitate to those of his own, and he basically uses the state machinery to persecute people who don't support him politically. I think the notion of unity should be based on principle. I think what is source for the goose is source for the gander. What you apply to the left-hand side in the same way you must apply it to the right-hand side. There have been people within the Ramaphosa faction, in my view, have been found wanting of wrongdoing with regard to the finding of the Zondo Commission. But some people have turned a blind eye to those people. But on the other hand, others who belong to the other faction have been prosecuted. So I think those things, one needs to manage them properly.
Now, finally, Dr. McKinley, you did, in your earlier submission, you did talk about the problems of the African National Congress and how they've been consistently losing the majority. And if you go by those records, it looks like 2024, they will lose, their majority will be eroded. You talk about problems of load shedding, the economic problems, and corruption. Now, what does the African National Congress need to do to regain the confidence of South Africans before the 2024 elections? And is there still time?
Well, it's not very much time, but they could do several things. The one thing, obviously, that would be an immediate boost would be if they could get the power cuts under control, the load shedding, particularly during the holiday season, particularly when people are trying to have a break and enjoy themselves. I think that would be certainly a very positive thing. Secondly, they need to get the economy moving in a much more job-creating direction. Our problem here is our structural unemployment is huge. The expanded unemployment is up to nearly 40%, and that's not sustainable, and it's particularly among the youth. So they need to drive job-creating programs, they need to drive investment programs, and these things they can do, at least in the shorter term, which would give a boost to the economy and certainly provide, I think, an economic boost. I would say, thirdly, they need to seriously consider the extension of the income grants. So the special relief that was during COVID of a monthly grant to those that are completely destitute or those that do not have jobs, I think this needs to be increased. People are relying on that lifeline, and it would make a very big difference in their lives. And then finally, as we say, the corruption, and if Ramaphosa does not rein in, irrespective of whether it's in his camp or in the opposing factions, if he doesn't rein in this arrogance and greed and this sense of entitlement that so many of the politicians have, that they can just basically, as soon as they get into public office, do whatever they want and get away with it. If that is not, they're going to pay a huge price at the polls, because people are tired. They're really, as we say in South Africa, they're angry. And in that sense, I think Ramaphosa's got his work cut out for him. And I think he can do a decent job. Whether or not the ANC as a party is willing to go along with that agenda is a whole nother story, because the problem here is not an individual, it's a party that has lost its way to a large extent and that has lost the trust of a large section of the population. And to get that back, it's going to have to work very, very hard.
Thank you very much, Dr. McKinley. I would like to say thank you to the panel. It's a fine place to wrap up the conversation. Thank you, Dr. Dale McKinley, Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, and Dr. Hermon Ogbamichael. It was a pleasure talking to you on this subject. Thanks for your time and contribution.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.